Welcome everybody to today's professional development seminar. My name is Scott Hamill. I'm a professor here at UAA. And for today's very good talk, we have Kelly Thomas, who is fairly new to Alaska. And so she's going to talk about AI and let us know how that relates to her background.
Thank you. Good afternoon. All right, everybody, thanks for coming today. I appreciate the introduction and so glad to be here, brought in by the UAA. I want to let you know that this presentation is mostly focused towards engineers. Everybody here engineers? Okay, great. So my name is Shelley Thomas. I'm a professional engineer. I come from Arkansas, but Alaska is our new forever home. So looking forward to getting to know all of you a bit better. The presentation today is not just about AI. It's about how engineers can thrive and really explore AI to leverage it better in your careers, to help you with problem solving, innovation, things like that. So AI empowers us to strike the perfect balance between, exploring our innovative potential and staying true to our engineering principles. So we'll get into that a bit more. And it's not just about solving technical problems. So, what I've found is really helpful with AI is achieving that work-life balance. So I think, if any of you have corporate careers, you probably all, work extra hours. You've got projects that have been sitting that you haven't been able to accomplish yet. And that may stand true for those of you who have roles like Dr. Hamill as well. So it's, how can we use AI better to kind of clone ourselves to get more out of our day and our efforts? And think of this as your guide to navigating AI while trying to achieve your personal and professional goals, because we shouldn't look at it as just an application for work. I really find that there are a lot of benefits to using it personally too. And I want to take you back to the year 2000. So I had a professor, Dr. Carl Griffiths, and he was 70. He was past his retirement age, but he was ahead of his time. So he would teach us to use computer programs, design websites. It was one of our more favorite classes in engineering. And some of his peers, were people his age wouldn't even touch computers. But I want us to kind of take that spirit of exploration and that, he had really a lack of fear of new things and embrace that when you think about AI. And know that that's going to get you further in achieving your goals. And I think if he could embrace that, we could too. So how many people have a pretty good feel for what AI is? Do you feel like? Yeah, couple hands.
It's a murderous machine.
Yeah. So right now they define it as two types of AI. So there's narrow AI, which is what most of you know is ChatGPT. It's large language models. It's things that we work with every day. And then there's general AI. So general AI is we're not there yet. General AI is what is considered AI that can actually think like a human. It does sometimes feel when you're using, things like some of these large language models that they have human-like responses, but we've got to remember that they've just been trained on huge amounts of natural language. So they have used this to try and recreate responses that are, sound human-like, but it's not thinking like a human. And so when you're talking about AI, some of the terms you might hear are machine learning, deep learning, NLP, which is natural language processing, and of course, computer vision. So one of the newer things that's come out over the last year and a half is that Gemini and some of the large language models can actually look at an image and they can assess it. So we could take a picture of this room and ask ChatGPT to reorganize the room for us. And it would produce a new image and say, depending on your goals, I think that these are a few setups that could work better for you. So you could use it in your remodeling efforts or reorganizing your closet. things like that. But you can also take a picture of a research paper that you've done 20 years ago and lay it out, take pictures of it, upload it, and say, you know, I really want to modernize this. I want to make it more simple, and it could clean it up for you. So we can talk a little bit more. I told everybody that if we finish this presentation soon enough and get through all the pieces, then we could talk a little bit about prompt engineering and have some back and forth at the end there. I want to pause and see just how many of you feel like you use AI in your daily life. So you probably use it whether you know it or not. So Netflix uses AI. You know, a lot of the programs that we use every day are predicting what we need or what we want based on what they see us do. So it's in the fabric of our lives. And for engineers, I just want you to think of it as one of your greatest assets. So think about where you're seeing AI in your daily life. And what you may see are programs like if you use Microsoft Excel every day, you know, you've always used it a certain way. You're used to putting in your formulas. You may not realize that there are all these AI applications that are in there now. So you can analyze data. There's a lot more that you can do. And sometimes some of these are just hiding in plain sight. So try and think about how you can use AI more in your everyday, just your work or your home life. This metric really stunned me. So 90% of the world's data has supposedly been generated in the last 2 years. What that means for engineers is that we are at, you know, an amazing advantage to be able to use that data. Engineers, I mean, I don't know about you guys, but I love data. I really, really love data. So I think that, you know, we as engineers are, you know, even if we're not considered a prompt engineer, like there's a lot of people out there that are saying, I'm a prompt engineer. We can really have an advantage over many other disciplines because we have an affinity for data. And because we know more about what we're looking for and trends and how to find those trends, you can instruct ChatGPT or whatever AI model that you might be using better than somebody who might not have that background. So just think about that. How can we convert that flood of data into actionable insights? AI is projected to contribute 15.7 trillion to the global economy by 2030. So the reason why you might want to learn AI is because it's going to be in our jobs. They say that 85% of jobs haven't even been invented yet. 54% of employees will need significant reskilling by 2025. So I put the sources there. I don't know that we need to say that everybody needs reskilling, but I think that if you embrace it and if you're like ahead of the curve and you're reskilling yourself, you're going to have an advantage in your, you know, everyday work. And you're going to be able to help other people who might be a little slower to adopt it, just in that way. So something to think about. What can you learn that's going to give you the competitive edge? And there's also another metric, 71% of companies have adopted AI in at least one business unit. Think about it in terms of like practical, predictive maintenance is a big one. So Internet of Things. You know, a lot of our cars have computers in them now, so they can hook it up and figure out what's gone wrong with the car, or they can say, hey, you're due for this or you're due for that. So that's another application that you can design yourself. If you're in a corporate organization that has like engineering roles, you can help those engineers to say, look at all the data of when these things have gone wrong. And then you can plug it into an Internet of Things device and say, we think that these things are going to go wrong by this date. And it's not perfect, but it's a lot better than just being reactive. So that's what we're finding in our workplace as well. Now the challenges. 48% of engineers say they lack time for learning new skills. I mean, how many of you feel like I just do my job? It's so hard to make time to learn new things. I mean, I know I struggle with that. So I do use AI to help me plan that out. You know, I'll block my calendar. I mean, that's a no-brainer, right? We always block our calendar and then end up derailing at some point, but that's inevitable. But make time for it, you know. These concerns are valid, but try and figure out, you know, if there's one program that you use a lot, say I'm gonna spend 10 minutes once a week looking for ways to use AI in this program. You know, it's in there, like Microsoft Excel, to say, I'm gonna use 10 minutes of my week and just put it down on your calendar and you know, try and get that done. And I've been able to make some really good progress just because sometimes getting over the hump of getting started is the hardest part. What's one challenge that you guys have faced? Anybody want to talk through a challenge they faced when they've adopted new technology?
Uncomfortable,
Yeah, uncomfortable.
compatibility with legacy systems.
Yeah. I found that too. One of the biggest frustrations I have is that my expectations don't always match up with the output. So I'll start, you know, using a program and it's just not giving me what I want exactly. And I get really frustrated and I'll walk away from it. And one of the things that I've found with AI is, you know, there are a lot of different programs out there, but you can actually use them together. So I'll give you guys a quick example. My daughter had a project she wanted to make bookmarks for her school with our 2 to 8. And so we got on ChatGPT and we asked ChatGPT to help us with some ideas. And it said, well, maybe you can create some themed bookmarks. You know, we said, well, okay, but ask her some questions so that we can get it, you know, better tailored to what she wants, right? So ChatGPT asks some questions, multiple choice. She answers them. It came back with, here's the themes and here's what you can do. And she said, well, I want some poetry. So it wrote a poem for each theme. But then we needed images. And I could ask ChatGPT to create images, but I wasn't very happy with the output. So we said, can you create a prompt for us to enter into Midjourney to get the images that we want for these bookmarks? And so ChatGPT actually wrote the prompt for Midjourney. And then we put the prompts into Midjourney and got the output of some really beautiful stuff. I wish I could show it here, but I didn't put it in the presentation. So, you know, we were able to create the poetry from ChatGPT. We were able to create the images from Midjourney, put it all together in Canva. And we were able to have some really great stuff that we could physically print for her school event. So sometimes, you know, look outside the box. Don't be just limited to what that one program can do. How are we doing? So let's talk about flexible work arrangements. You know, AI can increase productivity up to 40%. So when you're thinking about how to use AI, you know, sometimes it can help to think about it the day before. You know, how can you be more productive in your next day? And use that productivity boost to get some extra time back so that you're not working like that 80-hour work week or that 60-hour work week. You're able to spend, you know, more time. Think about it in terms of spending more time with your family. So take that extra time you're getting and hopefully you can spend it, do something good. Collaboration is really important. So organizations that use AI for decision-making are 19 times more profitable, according to this source. Let AI do the heavy lifting. So I know it sounds like I'm a little bit of a broken record there, but let AI do your data analysis and you can have more time for creative thinking. So here's some examples of companies that have been successful just this year. So ABB had a 40% cost savings in operations. You know, it's kind of hard to read, maybe some of that slide, but they improved sustainability metrics. Toyota actually uses it to store their knowledge from their engineering team. So they have their engineering team input their wisdom, you know, that tribal knowledge into the system. And then they've created AI agents using Microsoft Azure OpenAI to actually be able to reproduce that information when people have questions. So, you know, that is possible for you to be able to create your own agents in a lot of different ways. ChatGPT is one of them, but you can kind of keep it as a knowledge-based resource. And then it has memory now, a lot of these, so you can go back and ask it questions. So sometimes if I go to a really great meeting and I didn't take good notes, I can, on my way home, turn on the voice and talk through some of the points that were relevant and important to me. And then I can ask it to take those notes, but also organize them. Because sometimes, you know, my train of thought can just be like all over the place. And it's going to organize them for you so that you can reference them later. Go home and print them, put them on your wall, you know. So those are just a couple of examples, but we're not limited to that. We retain 75% more when learning by doing. AI course enrollments have surged hugely. I think, you know, if anything you guys take away from this as leaders in your organization, it's be that change. Support the people in your organization who are interested in doing this type of thing and talk with them. And you might find that if you never ask them about it, you might not know how interested they are or what they're exploring. But if you open up yourself to that discussion, you can kind of foster that culture and maybe find people to do hands-on projects with. Iteration is key. So sometimes, you know, I'll try to do something and I'll step away from it for a couple of days. And I'll come back and look at what it did and I'm like, this is terrible. This is not what I want. So iteration, iterate, keep iterating. Sometimes I'll get locked out of the chat because the AI says, oh, you asked too many questions, I'm done, and just shuts down, you've reached your limit. You can pull the output from that chat, put it into a different chat, and say, hey, this was the last thing we talked about. I want to start over. Ask me questions about, you know, what I think about this, or you take a look at this and tell me what you think. And so give the AI a role. Say you are a professional copywriter. You are a structural engineer. And yes, it may not have the right background, right? Don't ask it to do calculations that are going to put anybody's safety at risk. But if you're asking it to do a report, it might pull from knowledge of other people who've had those roles, who have put information into ChatGPT. And just remember, a lot of these AIs are pulling from oceans of information. You know, 90% of the data has been created in the last 2 years. If you're not really specific with your ask, you probably aren't going to get anything great. So give the AI a role, give it a job. Think about it like a high schooler that's your assistant, but a really, really smart, like high schooler that's ready to go to MIT. Got a lot of knowledge, but you have to kind of guide it to get what you want. And I find it's really successful to use pilots, especially with organizations that are large and have kind of a discomfort with letting those reins go. So using pilots so that you can kind of show this is how it works, even if it's just a test example, can be really successful for getting people, you know, to buy in. And I want to encourage everybody, just finding mentors is really helpful. So mentors have been great in my career and also in my endeavors with AI, because I can talk to people that are, you know, just way ahead of me and have been through some of the same challenges I have been through. And it can open doors for you. So find a community of like-minded professionals. that can inspire you to grow. And so here's some resources. This is actually a new book that's come out, Genesis. It's supposedly Henry Kissinger's last book. I think it just got announced yesterday. I haven't read it yet, obviously, but I wanted to put it on here for anybody who's interested in artificial intelligence, hope, and the human spirit. So it'll be interesting to see what's in that book. So I use LinkedIn. I use LinkedIn Learning. Coursera is good. You can use GitHub for programming. ChatGPT, obviously. I find Perplexity is very helpful. So remember that ChatGPT didn't have access to the internet, and sometimes it does hallucinate with its sources. So hallucination is where it tries to be that smart responder that you think you need, but then it's making up sources. So there's some good examples I won't bring up here of people in important positions who use ChatGPT to make a presentation and then they didn't realize that their sources were made up. So use Perplexity because it can pull a lot of really good information that has verified sources. And you can always use voice, which is great because it speeds the process up. Midjourney is really good for image creation, and then Midjourney can work with Runway, so that way you can actually create a video. I'd love to show you some of the things that my family and I, my girls and I have done with Midjourney and Runway, but it will blow your mind. And remember that you can use ChatGPT and even Perplexity to create prompts for other programs. So go back and forth, ask ChatGPT to create prompts for ChatGPT so that it's helping you to create a better prompt. So just some takeaways for like how you can dive in if you don't have a lot of experience, or even if you do. Remember to explore your existing tools in your workplace. Don't be afraid to develop your AI skills and apply that to daily tasks, because that's the fastest way to learn. It's just, I'm not going to quit my job and go off and just learn AI, but I can use AI every day in my job, every day in my home life if I can. Collaborate and champion projects internally. So be that, change maker. And don't forget that this metric is important. So 70% of people believe AI developers should be held accountable. Let's talk about responsible AI or explainable AI.
Excuse me.
Bless you.
Thank you.
So when you're building anything in AI, if you're planning to present it to your manager, be sure that you wrote down the steps on how to get there. And if you didn't write down the steps, that's okay. Sometimes you can ask it to remind you, hey, what did I put in that got us here? It's not perfect, but make sure that you're ready to explain that, especially for somebody who might have doubts about the use of AI. You don't want to just come to your boss and say, I did this great thing and it solves all our problems and here's the output. They're always probably going to ask you, wait a minute, how did you get there? How did you do that? They want to be able to trust you, but you've got to build up that trust with the background. And just ensure that the systems that we build are fair and aligned with the right data. And so in summary, we've covered a little bit about what AI is, why it matters, the huge amount of data that's out there and how we can harness it, and how to get started and potentially how to use it in your work-life balance. So I would love to hear if anybody has any ideas on how they'd like to get started, like what next steps might be. Anybody feeling a little bit more excited about AI?
Question, I never understood the difference between like neural networks and AI. Like, look at us. Do you know the difference, or?
So, there are a lot of different ways that people explain it. Neural networks, think about it like it's pulling all of this large language information and it's kind of like a brain. Like when you look at pictures of our brain and all the electrical connections happening between all the different areas. So it's not necessarily linear. You know, I'm sure there are better explanations that we could pull up right now from an expert, but I think about it in terms of how the, you know, this computer, or processor is basically making decisions, not just based on this. It's based on this, you know, all these different connections. A neural network, neural link, you know, natural language processing definitely go together.
Sorry, I was
Yeah.
gonna kind of add on that a neural network is basically a mode of processing that attempts to simulate the way a human brain works. It essentially works from like large amounts of training of inputting data and reacting. And basically essentially just recording the response from your neural network that you made. And then it can reinforce certain connections and then essentially just save the output. That's essentially how the large language models are generated in the first place, is just by throwing a massive amount of information at one of these neural networks to output sort of like really complex what is it? Series of equations that can then almost be
Learning
yeah,
from
I guess.
itself, yeah,
Maybe not the best explanation, but
human learning, but machine learning.
Sure. So you mentioned integrating the AI tools with other software packages, right? So have you seen, could you comment on like engineering workflows, like examples of AI? How are people using AI to integrate, to say, do the data analysis, right? Because the large language models are so crap at math,
Yeah,
right? But they'll set up stuff and feeding that into, say, Excel or Python or.
yeah. Well, I could start with one example that I experienced at my work. So, you know, product information systems where we take all the specs, say from a particular piece of equipment or maybe the 5,000 long parts list, right? We have all of our equipment is coded with like a 15-digit code. But as part of my job for e-commerce, I had to figure out, you know, what are the diameters of these parts? What material are they made out of? You know, how are they used? Like what equipment they're used with? Some of that's a little bit more complicated. But I took some of the, you know, key like indicators that are in these names, and then I said, help me figure out, you know, which of these 5,000 parts have this in their name. And so it's able to recognize, you know, these are all brass. And these are all, you know, 1/4 inch diameter, outer diameter. And these are all, you know, inner diameter of this. And then have that output. But like you said, it does struggle. So using Copilot or Microsoft Excel AI capability directly is a really good way to start, but a lot of people don't even know it's there. They just always use Excel and never even try the AI version of it. Have you worked with that much yet?
Yeah, I use Copilot a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's got limitations.
Yeah, I teach a lot of the intro data analysis
Okay,
stuff here, so we're struggling with this
yeah,
a lot, right,
Yeah.
every day, like how much, and I guess where I'm always sort of, right, is how much of the AI is being used to say, determine like, oh, I need to know these things from the data
mhm,
versus just generating the code to find those things from the data.
yeah. Yeah, I think, you know, I'm still learning a lot about that, and ChatGPT supposedly has, you know, a lot of capability in terms of data analysis, but I need to explore it more. Because I've used Excel a lot. And that's a big struggle. And even Copilot, I haven't found that it does too well with those types of analysis sometimes. You've got to have the background in the data analysis to know what you're looking for in the first place, so that you can give it really good direction.
Yeah.
So
Right.
it's an area I want to learn more about too. I should go to one of your classes. Okay,
I'm curious about the use of AI in education now, and just in terms of ethics, maybe somebody, if you're a professor here, or maybe you're, in terms of engineering and education, at what point, and as well as the non-engineering classes that people are taking to get, to distributive requirements, so to speak, to make sure that they're a well-rounded sort of a graduate when they graduate. So what is the college, what do professors, what do students think about the use of AI to write papers, do book reports, do the simple engineering calculations that might result, what's the level speed or something, sort of thing, so.
Yeah, we can speak.
And make sure that your graduates still have good engineering judgment at the end of the day.
So I will say that as you can imagine, I mean, we've had conversations a lot about this. In fact, there are conferences, I've been to a couple of conferences where there's, sessions on this just for educators, basically, and because everyone's trying to figure that out, right? I will say that in the civil engineering department, we tend to encourage its use responsibly for sort of the what I would term soft skills, right? We haven't really got into some of the except for in the data analysis, we haven't really got too much into pairing things with data analysis or even design, right? We haven't really gone there at all. I know some of the heads of companies in town have asked me in particular, like, hey, we're heading in the direction where we're gonna do iterative design using AI graphically, which is wild, right? Like that's the idea. That's not this at all. That's like I don't even know how that works, but my understanding is that you basically contract with Microsoft or somebody and you upload your company's data and then, your survey data, for example, and then you have it iterate every possible design and you come up with an optimized, cut and fill, right? Or something. So, to my knowledge, nobody's actually doing that full time yet, maybe a few experiments, but we haven't, in the education world, we haven't gone anywhere near that. For the most part, we're focusing on like, hey, you have to write a capstone, a final report for your capstone. You want to use, ChatGPT to help you with that? Fine, do that. Please do that, so I can read it and tell you how bad it is, right? Like, and is it better or worse than you writing? Because you're not a good writer either, right? So like, that's kind of where we are in there. You comment on where you use it.
I actually let students use it in all my classes. And so I teach I teach a pretty broad spectrum from like 200 up to grad classes. And in the upper level, I'm an electrical, right? So in the upper level EE stuff, it's not a panacea at all, right? Like, so you really gotta tailor, it can come up with the code, right? It's really good at generating the code to try and answer the question. But if you put any sort of analysis requirement on it, it can't, and it doesn't really do it. But it's excellent for generating code. So in the early classes, that's where I'm really struggling to integrate it, right? So how do you balance teaching somebody what is the average of a data set, right? When would you want to find the average of a data set? What does it mean? What do these statistics mean? When you can just ask the machine says, oh, here's how you find it, here's what it is. It'll write all that code for them.
I have an example of when, like, I've used it for learning that kind of concepts. So if any of you have played with Google Notebook LM, anybody? Okay. Language model. Yeah, so, I took the Arctic engineering course because I wanted to get my PhD in Alaska, so yeah, almost there. Some of the concepts were, really, really interesting to me, and I wanted to learn them when I was sitting in front of my computer, so. Got 3 kids and, got a lot going on, obviously. It's hard to understand all these concepts just from looking at PowerPoint, taking time outside my work to do that. So I took the PowerPoint and all the notes and I loaded it up into Google Notebook LM and I created a podcast. So it was a 13-minute podcast, depending on how much content is covered in each section. And it was basically 2 people talking in a really engaging conversational manner about ice engineering, snow engineering, electrical engineering concepts would be a good example. And it's a really great way for us to understand because we like hearing stories and I didn't find that if I gave it enough information and enough background with the data that I provided it, I didn't find that it really made very much stuff up. So it was really helpful. I mean, hardly anything was made up. It was just straight from the content, but it made it so engaging. And I could listen to it in the car or while I was making dinner. It's just a fun way to learn. Yeah,
That's really interesting.
good way to apply it.
Yeah.
For beginners.
Oh, yes, as far as repackaging. And-
Yeah.
And it's it's amazing, you can take a piece of code that's something that's maybe really dense. And you can just say, explain it,
Yeah,
and it does a great job at that.
yeah.
So
I
yeah,
just
I
feel like
don't,
learning
I don't
better.
wanna forbid it.
Computer code, not building code.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
Maybe building
We live in a
code.
different world. We live in a different world.
No,
But yeah,
Yeah, I'm probably older than most people here. I came from a generation where it's all literally killer machines. I mean, you talk about the biasness that was predestined this whole thing. Every probably uneducated person in society hates AI. I mean, this is great that you're doing this because it's giving a different path. Away from that fear path. Because it sounds like to me, it's actually benign. It's not self-actualized. That's a better way to put it than it can't think like a human. It's not self-aware. And I know that's a Terminator term, which is horrible, but that's not what I mean. I mean, that's what it means to be human, is to be self-aware. So the thing can still be shut off and not even realize it was shut off. But the question I want to ask, and I'm trying to steer a different path, where the heck do I start? And I'm not where you guys are at all. I'm an engineer, but this has been taboo for me. Where do I begin? And some of the things I'm concerned about, like he's talking about, what can this thing do in the hands of the wrong person psychologically to us? Because if there's enough data put in, it can literally analyze you and reach you in a way that you're not even aware you're being reached. And then the other thing that should scare all of us who are older, what can it do with data as far as investment goes? Think about what it can do when it looks at the output of different companies financially, which one do you invest in? If the person knows how to put the data in for that, you can literally generate the best portfolio ever designed. But I don't want to scare anybody. I just want to say that these things are possible. And then where do I begin? Really begin from a toddler stage, because I have been fearful. No, not getting in, no. Where do I begin? How do I start where it's not? Because this is overwhelming, the stuff you guys are doing. I get it, I'm an engineer, I understand calculations and all that, but I'm already using it on Netflix, I'm sure, but that's not what I'm talking about. How do I get my foot in the door like you're doing with your daughters? Because my daughter probably needs to start. It's coming. It's
I
coming.
think kids, it's really important, and that's
Yeah.
why I don't want them to be scared of it. And I want them to have a comfort level with it so that they can learn, but also be aware of the implications. And if they've never worked with it, it's gonna be a lot harder for them to understand the implications. But we talk about safety, we talk about, what to put in and what not to put in. So we could do a whole nother lunch and learn with confidential data means this, and, you know, make sure and anonymize your data if you're putting it in there. Don't put in, you know, everything your company ever sold and what you sold it for, and then expect that nobody's gonna figure that out, because it is somewhat public.
You know, you laugh, but you
Yeah,
should.
no,
I mean, this is
everybody
a
needs that
topic that's
training.
not going away.
The kids need that training.
And
They
we
need
need
to know
that
that.
training, because
Yeah.
we're all learning it
Yeah.
too. We're kids.
Yeah,
We're kids.
innocent.
Yeah.
So.
I would advocate for, you know, this opening ChatGPT and putting in stuff that you do, right? Like Matt said, you know, you just say, I'm writing a proposal to do this work, you know, here's my idea, and just see what it, you don't have to use it, see what it does, right? And then as you do that a little bit more, you get more comfortable with it. I used it to write some code that I needed to write, not really code, computer code. For something that I was doing, and my skills in Python are super rusty, and I was like, I wanna do this, and it just did it. They're like, wow, that's fantastic, right? And you mentioned LinkedIn Learning, is that they have courses on it?
They do, they're starting to get more courses. I've got a course that I'm gonna apply to maybe teach on LinkedIn Learning and see how that goes. It's kind of the far-reaching goal, because it's kind of tough to get in, but yeah, they have a lot of really good courses, a ton of them, and some for engineers. But when I look on what's on LinkedIn, I feel like a lot of what's being marketed for AI is for marketers and graphic designers and solopreneurs, you know, people doing their own thing, and that's great for them. But I feel like it is a gap for engineers, and so that's why I wanted to talk about it today, and I want to have more occasions to reach out to engineers and understand what's important to them, because I'm passionate about it, and I really find that it's fun, and I'm just doing this in my spare time.
A lot of engineers are older, the people we're pulling from, it is tough to get young people.
Well, even the younger ones aren't really using it much, you know, the ones that I
Yeah.
talk to.
I can
because
tell you the older
they
ones
don't know
are.
where to start.
I can promise you, they're not.
But yeah, just using it for basic things. And since we have a few minutes, I mean, we could probably talk about some of the ways that you can use ChatGPT better when you do open it. So,
You know, I will share one thing. My wife got cancer last year, and I have a buddy who's a programmer. He's electrical engineer and a computer programmer. He's got degrees in both. And he went on to one of the AIs and typed in something, and he sent it to me. And I had already talked to the doctors. That information was accurate.
wow.
I mean, and he's a nerd. He knows nothing about cancer at all. But the stuff that thing generated, I was like, valid. Oh my gosh. I mean, it was very effective from a medical standpoint. And obviously, because he's a computer programmer and an engineer, he doesn't know how to type in medical jargon, you know? So it definitely produced a spot on. It was spot on. But whether or not, you know, if we go on and Google something, whether or not we know if that data is coming from a valid source or not, especially if you're relying on it, that's tricky, where I already knew it. And I was like, whoa. So.
Well, that's the thing, I occasionally teach drilling engineering courses. I'm 71 years old, so you might not be the oldest guy in the room. But anyway, I just said, and they asked me, I was asked to develop a course for extended reach drilling, you know, 5-day course. So I just wrote it, just asked ChatGPT, develop an outline for a 5-day course in extended reach drilling, and boom, I mean, within 15 seconds, it spit out a 2-page outline of a course, you know, what things that should be covered, you know, and I've got enough experience where I said, no, that's not right, you know, but this is a good, you know, it's a good start, so, you know, I'm
Good
sure,
stuff to start with.
yeah, I could start with it and begin to flesh it out a little bit more, so, you know, even things like, you know, a personal letter to somebody who's just lost a loved one or something, you know, a letter that you can't, you know, that's so hard to write, and just ask ChatGPT, can you please write a letter of condolences for me? You can give them a little more information, you know, if you want to, about whatever, and boom, they'll print you out a letter, you know, and boom, you go, yeah, that sounds really good. You can tweak it a little bit yourself, make it a little more personal, whatever you want to do, but anyway, you know, the large language models are pretty impressive. I look forward to the day when it will begin to do things like you can the architect gives you the plan, these outline drawings, and you can say, okay, let me see the structural, the structural fabric for this thing, this building right now, and then you can check, you can obviously verify it or yourself, but I imagine that won't be long at all until that's really happened.
From a historic aspect, I mean, we work on, structures and whatnot, there's no drawings about it. Everything's been lost. So even if you could go in and survey something and then take that data and put it into a system, which could then generate how the thing was built, you could actually back generate drawings that you could work off of, for redesign.
Yeah, I think AutoCAD and some of the other softwares are really doing some amazing things with their AI stuff. And I've gotten out of the design stuff for my role, so I'm more on the e-commerce side. So data analysis is more my thing right
Yeah,
now.
there's
But
scanning.
yeah, it's really huge.
They're trying to do that, tie together,
Yeah.
3D scanning.
So one of the things that we use it for is, we've got these 2D images of equipment that can be pretty complicated. And what I do is I represent their e-com division. We sell parts. So when something breaks down on that equipment, there's a phone call from a guy at the plant and he says, this thing broke. I need to replace this part. And everybody says, what part? And he says, that thing on the back that makes this noise. And it's really hard to determine exactly what he needs, especially the correct part number for the equipment that he needs. So we're trying to line up things like the serial number from the equipment, but also we're trying to create 2D diagrams, which we have made live now, that people can look at and they can pick out the part, they can click on the part, they can add it to their cart directly. So that way it gets the right part number and nobody has to be like, I don't really know what part number you need. It's somewhere on the back end of the thing, cuts down on the confusion a lot. But when you're using ChatGPT or, any large language model, Copilot even, don't forget that giving it roles is really important. So yes, ask it to write a letter, but you could also say, here's a little bit about my background, and I want you to imagine that I'm a very eloquent writer. And that, this needs to be very short. So you can give it a tone, you can give it a context, a link. Give it a little bit more background, some guidance is important. And then I think I mentioned this, but one of the things I find most successful is getting it to ask me questions. So I say, give me 10 multiple choice questions, ask them one at a time, and then we'll go from there. And that's really successful in getting it to kind of learn more about you and what you're trying to accomplish.
You just ask it to ask you questions
Yeah.
related to what you're asking.
Yes. Yeah, it's really fun to see what you'll get out of that because it just learns so much about what you're looking for.
Well, give an example, what you're talking about.
Yeah, so I mean, this is a fun example. It's not engineering, but my daughter wanted to write a book about a seagull. And so we asked ChatGPT to ask her 10 multiple choice questions one at a time. And so it said, how old are you? What do you want the book to be about? Do you want it to be sad or happy? Do you want it to be illustrated or not illustrated? It went through the questions. And then we answered all the questions and it created an output. We weren't quite happy with that. So we said, ask us some more questions. We're not quite happy with this and ask you more questions. So it just allows it to have that back and forth with you because otherwise you're just going off of that initial input. It can go off in a million different directions, maybe not getting you what you need. So it's just something to explore.
Yeah, one thing I can point out also, I've played with it a little bit at home. You can download the software, do a complete local installation. So if there is concern about leaking proprietary or protected information, you can actually quarantine that into your local installation and have it just there.
I got a question for like the professors, especially if you're writing code for a class, how does that border on plagiarism? If you're saying you have to use certain functions in a program and incorporate that into a code and solve this problem. how is that, how would you grade that on plagiarism and stuff that's already been provided out there?
Have you guys seen the meme with Will, you know, okay, so iRobot, right? Everybody's seen the movie iRobot. And it has him asking the robot, can you make code with no examples, just making it up? And he's like, and the robot says, no, can you? Because we're all,
We do the same thing.
yeah, we're all getting it from somewhere, but
I don't really, I mean, the math is, there's no, I mean, if you're just writing a function to, you know, whatever, calculate a bunch of statistics from a data set. There's not really any.
Actually came from Da Vinci, and you have to make sure you say that.
Well, I mean, you can't, there's sort of a fine line right between an algorithm and an equation, but you can't copy protect mathematics. So, I'm pretty lax about it, right? But the code that we write for my classes is generally very short, targeted, mathematically oriented code. It's a different deal if you're creating like a software package. Or it's like an integrated system, right? So yeah, I know CSCE handles it a lot different.
Yeah, I would say that like a capstone for computer science, that's a much bigger problem.
And yeah, and those legal issues aren't settled
Yeah.
above our pay grade.
For like a civil engineering capstone, you know, you're writing a report at the end a lot of times, and we struggle with that a little bit, but not a lot, because again, the purpose of an engineering education is part of the purpose is to learn to use the tools that are available to you. When you go off into business, you're going to use the tools that are most productive, you know, that are available to you. And so, you know, I know people are already writing proposals and project reports using AI, right? So our job is to get you to be better at that, right? And not just like bang your head against the wall trying to get started. So if you are better at prompting to the point where you can generate a good report and then edit it so that it's a good report, then I don't have a problem with that. Is it plagiarism? I don't know. Like, I don't think it's plagiarism if, you know, you edited it and you prompted it. But I think that the real problem as an engineering industry, and specifically as educators is, you know, as some of you have pointed out, you can get it started, right? You can say, here's what I want, and it'll save you a ton of time generating the initial content. But then you have the expertise to go through and be like, well, this is right and this is wrong. And I don't want to say it like that, or prompt it again and say it differently. Or at what point do we lose the ability to do that? Right? At what point do we stop teaching the fundamentals or, you know, EITs to BPEs to the point where they can no longer discern that this is right and this is wrong? That's the key, right? Because once we have the expertise to look at the output and say, well, this is not what I want, that's fine. And that took a career to get. But at what point do we end up with, like, you know, people that are 8 or 10 years out of school that still can't have that skill, right? So that's, in my mind, that's the big danger, right? It's like,
Intuition is what you're talking about.
uh,
Intuition.
No.
People can like look at something and say something doesn't look right.
intuition and experience.
Comes from experience.
It's experience, right? And you've done the calcs yourself enough to know that there's
Right.
something off, right? Or you drilled enough holes to know that there's something that's not right, or here's how you should do it. And, you know, if you're constantly just taking, you know, not data, but if you're constantly taking input from something that's generating. Yeah, you got a question?
No, you got, yeah, just more of a comment.
Okay.
Matt Gibbs says, is this like the old complaint about not always having a calculator in your pocket?
Well, it's funny, that's a good question, because one of the things that came up, the first time I went to a seminar on this, or a meeting during a conference, one of the things that was pointed out is that particularly those of us in structural engineering, have actually been dealing with this for 20 years. Right, because the question always comes up both on the education side and on the professional side of like, if you're using structural analysis model, how do you know that it's right? It's a black box, right? And so we've been dealing with that for 20 or 30 years, right? Because computers have been generating structural analysis models for 20 years. And, we have evolved our education system to sort of, teach and utilize and instruct people to like look at the reflection and see if it seems right and, utilize that. And this is not different from that, I think. It's just we're just at the beginning, right? And it's moving way faster. That's the other thing, right? Structural analysis models were slow and cumbersome and the graphics were terrible and it took 20 years or 10 years to kind of get up to speed, whereas this is like 2 years, it's gonna be there.
I say ban computers and calculators back to slide rule.
Bring back the
Slide
slide rule.
Gonna make you a bumper sticker.
Yeah.
Get back to slide rule. Okay, well,
Can anyone use a slide rule?
I have
It's
some.
But not very many people can still use a slide.
like, I'm so grateful that all of you guys came, hopefully not just for the food. Hopefully you found some value in this, and, Shelley Thomas PE, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn if you like. Happy to have the invitations and ongoing discussion here locally, so look forward to getting to know you all a bit more. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Hold on. Need the code back.
It's the password. Yeah, password is thriving all lowercase. Password for the survey online. Yeah, thriving all lowercase. All right, thank you very much.
I'm back.